This is a wee video, folks, about the Loch Ness Monster, right? Now, Loch Ness in the Highlands of Scotland has 7.4 million cubic metres of fresh water. Now, that is more fresh water than all the lakes of England and Wales put together, and more than enough space, I'm sure you agree, folks, for a monster to be hiding in. Just to be clear, I'm talking about the Loch Ness Monster here. Do you know what I mean? I'm not talking about like your uncle or Jimmy Savile or Prince Andrew or anything like that. Do you mean like if Prince Andrew was going to hide out in the Highlands, he would just go to Balmoral. Wouldn't he just go to Royal Neverland? He wouldn't be dicking about doing in Loch Ness. Although to be fair, they do have a Pizza Express in Inverness now, so I don't know. Now I'm talking about the Loch Ness Monster, the big cheese, Scotland's biggest celebrity, the original self-isolator, a guy who's been social distancing for 1,500 years now. And when you think the Loch Ness Monster, you probably got that image of your head with the kind of long protruding neck and the really small head and the exaggerated humps. And if you've ever been to Inverness, you'll realise that that's what the people there look like. And you might think that it's just a simple misunderstanding. It was just an Invernessian out for a swim. But I can assure you, folks, the Loch Ness Monster is not human. I know this for a fact because the people of Inverness, they only learnt to swim after the Aquadome was built in 1997. No, the Loch Ness Monster, it falls in a long line of Celtic and Scottish folklore traditions of kind of river monsters and sea creatures. Things like selskies, who were they were seals who would come ashore and they would take on human form, and then they would return back to the sea and the ocean as seals once again. Which, if you think about it, is the perfect excuse for someone who has just been caught shagging a seal. You know what I mean? You just be like, don't know what to tell you, officer. It was human last night. It's they selskies, you know what I mean? They're at it again. And you had kelpies as well. And kelpies were like water and river horses who would run out of the water and grab folk and then drag them into the water and drown them, right? Which is presumably why they chose to build the kelpies in Falkirk on the banks of the Clyde Canal, because that is, to be fair, if you're going to end up at the bottom of any kind of stretch in water in Scotland, the Clyde Canal is probably the most likely, you know. And the first mention of the Loch Ness Monster dates back to the 6th century, the time when St. Columba, now St. Columba, he was an Irish missionary who'd come over to Scotland, and he's credited with introducing Christianity to Scotland. So St. Columba, he's out kicking about in the 6th century, and he's out converting folk, the Picts in the Highlands at that time. He's out converting them to Christianity, right? And he comes across these two guys who are burying their pal on the banks of Loch Ness, and he goes up to these boys and he's like, listen, what's the crack here, lads? What's happened to this guy? And they tell him that he was out swimming in the loch when he was attacked by a great big beast, by a big huge creature, right? Now, St. Columba, being a devout Christian, he was kind of predisposed to believing these kind of bullshit fantastical tales of monsters and fucking folk being resurrected from the dead and walking on water and all this kind of piss, right? So instead of apprehending what was quite clearly two guys who had just murdered their pal, right? What St. Columba does is he has one of his followers swim out into the loch to see what happens, right? So this guy swims out into the loch and he says that the Loch Ness Monster, this great beast, approached him in the water. And just as the beast approaches him and just as it's about to attack him, he made the sign of the cross. And suddenly the beast turned tail and swam away. Now I know what you're thinking, folks. Like normally beasts are attracted to the sign of the cross, aren't they? Right? But I feel like this guy was under a wee bit of pressure. Do you know what I mean? Like, because St. Columba, he was one of the very early Christians, you know, and St. Columba was kind of like that. You know your mate in 3rd year at school, when he would come back from his summer holidays and tell all his pals that he had lost his V-plates, do you know what I mean? Like, but you wouldn't know who the lassie was. It was a girl that he met. She's from England. She's going to come up and visit him the next summer. Do you know what I mean? Like, kind of bullshit that you could never possibly back up. Well, St. Columba, he claimed that he could resurrect folk from the dead and he could see into the future and all this kind of pish, right? So when this guy swims to the other side of the bank, he's obviously under a wee bit of pressure. He's like, listen, Columba, right? I was swimming out in the loch. Actually, do you know what? I wasn't swimming. I was walking across the loch, right? And this big beast that comes up to me. And honestly, Columba, I'm like, listen, I'm done for, lads. This is it. I'm up the road here, right? But do you know what? Quick thinking, I thought, do you know what I'll try? I'll just do the cross. I'll make the sign of the cross. And do you know what, Columba? The guy shat it. He shat it, mate. Honestly. He swam. You should have seen the look in his face. He swam at the bottom of that loch. I don't think we'll be hearing from him for at least another 1,500 years. And he was more or less right, to be fair, right? There's regular sightings of the monster, but things don't really kick off again until 1934. We have the most famous photograph of the Loch Ness Monster. It's probably the one that you guys all recognise. It's called the surgeon's photo. And that's because it was taken by a guy called Kenneth Wilson, who was a surgeon in London, right? Now, this photograph was published in the Daily Mail in 1934, and so the story kind of went viral, as it were, back in 1934, right? Now, this photograph has been widely discredited as being a hoax and being complete and utter bullshit, right? And obviously, it's not in the Daily Mail's interest to publish something that's complete and utter bullshit, right? That's just not within their remit at all. Although, to be fair, in 1934, what they were apparently doing is they were trying to get the Loch Ness Monster evicted from the loch, despite the fact that he had lived there for over, 1,500 years. He was a foreign species, and we really needed to take back control of the loch, Now listen, I don't know what your thoughts are on the Loch Ness Monster, whether you believe it, whether you think it's fake, whether you think it's real. All I can tell you is there's been loads of kind of sonar surveys and kind of satellite pictures, infrared photos. They've even done DNA tests of the water to kind of see if there's any kind of foreign species in the water. Kind of like a Jeremy Kyle episode where we find out who the Loch Ness Monster's real dad is, And they all come back inconclusive. I'm starting to think the Loch Ness Monster, he's kind of like Barack Obama. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can't really know whether he exists or not until we see the guy's birth certificate. Anyway, happy isolation, everyone.